Hi everyone, my name's Jen, I'm an author and a book reviewer, and I thought I would start a new reading vlog today. I have done so many themed reading vlogs on this channel, so many different kinds. I have a playlist of them which I'll link down below if you have missed any of them in the past. And one of the videos that I've done a couple of times is reading the oldest books on my shelves. And I don't mean the ones that were published ages ago, I mean the ones that have been sitting there unread by me for the longest. This video is going to be like that, but with a bit of a twist. Something that I used to do, and I want to say predominantly pre-booktube, so we're talking 10 years ago, if I discovered a new book by an author, I would then want to immediately read their entire backlist, or that would be my goal. So I would hunt through shops, often secondhand shops, especially when I was at uni, to find backlist titles, and then I would read them. But then there would always be some books that didn't get read and sat on my shelves, hence the ones I'm going to talk about today. So these are all authors, 5 of them, whose work I have read extensively in the past and enjoyed. I mean, maybe one of them less extensively, but I've read many of their books in the past and really enjoyed, but then still have some that I haven't got to yet. And I thought I would like to read one book at least from these 5 authors, with a slight caveat that the very last book I mention may not get read, and I will explain why as we go through. First off, we've got Jane Austen, our girl Jane Austen. I have read half of her books and I still have the other half yet to read. So here we have got Persuasion. These are the Penguin cloth-bound classics, which are designed by Coralie Bickford Smith. Emma, and also Sense and Sensibility. I have read the other 3, Mansfield Park, Northanger Abbey and Pride and Prejudice. And I think the one that I'm going to read in this vlog is Persuasion, and not just because it's the shortest, but because it's the only one I don't know too much about. I have seen adaptations of the other 2, especially the most recent adaptation of Emma, which I very much enjoyed, but I know little to nothing about Persuasion at all, and I would like to keep it that way. I'm not sure these even come with blurbs actually. No, they don't. So I couldn't give you an overview of it even if I wanted to, but obviously I will talk about it when I read it in this video. And I've been craving reading this for a while. I don't know if it's just because it's autumn. I'm not sure, but I will be reading a Jane Austen. Then this one is more recent. So I have read all of Michel Faber's books apart from his most recent non-fiction and these 2 short story collections. Michel is the author of The Book of Strange New Things, Crimson Petal and the White, Under the Skin, and lots of other books. So this is his debut collection of short stories. This is Some Rain Must Fall, and this is a reissue to tie in with the paperback of The Book of Strange New Things, which is very, very beautiful. And then another collection of stories of his that I have on my shelf that I haven't read is The Fahrenheit Twins. This one was first published in 2005, and Some Rain Must Fall was first published in the 90s. Then we have John Wyndham. Now I have read The Chrysalids and I have read Day of the Triffids, but I haven't read his other books unless my memory is deceiving me. The Chrysalids I remember really enjoying because it is about bodily difference. It is about a world where people whose bodies do not conform to normal expectations are excluded from society and live on the sidelines. And as someone with a disability and a limb difference, I just found it very interesting to read about. The Day of the Triffids I enjoyed less, though it is set in North London, which I found fun to read. I just couldn't get on board with the monstrous plants. I just couldn't take it very seriously. But in that book, everybody apart from our narrator and a few others is blinded by a event that happens, and then chaos ensues, and as I said, these murderous plants are going around the UK. Our narrator witnesses 2 people fighting over what they think is a tin of food in a supermarket, but it's actually a tin of paint, and I will always be haunted by that particular scene. Gives me the shivers just thinking about it. So 2 books of his that I have on my shelves that I haven't read before are Chucky by John Wyndham. The blurb of this one says, Matthew's parents are worried. At 11, he's much too old to have an imaginary friend, yet they find him talking to and arguing with a presence that even he admits is not physically there. This presence, Chucky, causes Matthew to ask difficult questions and say startling things. He speaks of complex mathematics and mocks human progress. And the other one I haven't read is The Midwich Cuckoos, which I know recently has been adapted again for the screen. It says, in the sleepy English village of Midwich, a mysterious silver object appears and all the inhabitants fall unconscious. A day later, the object is gone and everyone wakens unharmed, except that all the women in the village are discovered to be pregnant. It goes on to say that the resultant children do not belong to the people of the village, that they all look very different to them. They have abilities which give them mind control. It says this brings them into conflict with the villagers, just as a chilling realization dawns on the world outside. I'm not sure which of these two I will pick up. I might read the very beginning of each and then decide which one I am drawn to more, because at the moment all of those sound great. Then we have Angela Carter. I went through a period of reading a lot of Angela Carter's books and then stopped, but still have many of them on my shelves. So these are 4 books by her that I haven't read yet. We've got The Magic Toyshop, which I think will be the one that I pick up, because I have read the very beginning of this before and fell in love with it a bit. It's about a girl called Melanie who's sent away from her home to London to live with relatives that she has never met before, including Uncle Philip, who loves only the puppets he creates in his workshop, which are life-size and uncannily lifelike. I'm intrigued by that. I'm also intrigued by this one, which is The Infernal Desire Machines of Dr. Hoffman, which is inspired by E.T.A. Hoffman, and that in turn inspired Clara and the Sun by Ishiguro. So I'm also tempted by this because I would like to read this and see how that compares to Ishiguro's book, but I think The Toyshop is the one that's calling to me. Then we have The Passion of New Eve, which is giving me Wolf's Orlando, and also a collection of short stories by her called Fireworks. And then finally, the book I said and the author that I may not get to in this video because I feel like it's becoming a bit of a running joke on this channel. This is Margaret Atwood's The Robber Bride. It's the only book of hers or backlist title that I haven't read yet and would like to, but I have included this on a TBR for reading the oldest books on my shelves videos before, I think 2 different videos, and hadn't got around to reading it, mostly because I'm intimidated by its size, to be honest, and also just because I don't feel like I'm in a rush to read it, given it's the last of her books that I haven't read, and I have my whole life to read it. So I may read this in this video, but it is going to be the last on the pile. We'll see how I get on with the other 4 authors first. So Jane Austen, John Wyndham, Angela Carter, Michel Faber. Do I love these books as much as I did however many years ago when I read the other books of theirs? I thought this would be an interesting experiment, so let's see how I get on. In the meantime, it is a cold autumn day, so I would like to make some soup. If you're new to my channel, reading vlogs include, yes, talking about books, but also cooking and going out for walks as well. So let's go to the kitchen and make some soup. Okay, to soup. I got asked the last time I talked about making butternut squash soup how I cut the butternut squash, which is a very good question because they're really hard for anyone to cut. They're particularly hard to cut if you have ectrodactyly and arthritis. But my solution to this is to not cut them. And I can't believe, sorry, I'm just taking the stickers off these butternut squash. Can't believe that it took me so long to realise that. So if you're still stuck in that predicament, let me relieve you of it. You can just cook these whole. So I put them in the oven at like 170 for about an hour and 15 minutes. And then after that, you can just slice them and scoop out their insides. So normally, I would just use one, but then I've been making this soup about once a week and I feel that's a bit, well, not silly, but I may as well make twice the amount and then I don't have to make it every week because it freezes really well. So this recipe is super simple. I'm doubling the quantities obviously, and this will make, how many meals would this make? 8 really big portions. I'm sure you could stretch it further than that, but we tend to have quite a bit of soup when we have soup. The recipe is so easy. So I'll roast these in the oven for about an hour and 15 minutes on 170. And while those are roasting, I will soak 100 grams of red lentils, not tinned lentils, dried lentils, the ones you have to soak before using. And then I will fry 2 onions. I will add some garlic paste and some ginger paste. I will then scoop out all of the insides, not the seeds, but everything else from these butternut squash, add that to the pan, add the lentils, then add about 1.5 litres of stock, and then I will add some cumin and a small amount of chili flakes as well, and then I will let that cook for about 40 minutes, after which point, oh, I will add salt and pepper as well, after which point I will blitz it with a blender, and then I will stir through 2 tablespoons of yogurt right at the end. So yeah, it's delicious. I love it. You might need to add more water if it's a bit thick. It depends, because butternut squash are always different sizes. So I normally make bread to go with it, but I don't have time to make a loaf of bread this morning. So I'm going to make some flatbreads. Flatbread recipe is super easy. I'll link it in the description box down below, but it's just 500 grams of strong white flour, a 7-gram sachet of yeast, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 5 grams-ish of salt. I always eyeball it, so I'm guessing that's how much I'm putting in, a slug of olive oil, and 300 millilitres of warm water. Knead all that together, leave it to rise for an hour. That will make about 8 flatbreads. So what I tend to do is make 4, so we can have 2 each, and then I will just put the rest of the dough in some Tupperware, and that keeps nicely until the next day, and then you can have fresh flatbreads the next day too. To cook the flatbreads, I just roll them out onto the countertop and put a little bit of oil, vegetable oil, not olive oil, because vegetable oil is better at handling high heat. So I will use an egg wash brush to brush some vegetable oil on both sides of each flatbread. Get a pan on a high heat that has a lid as well, and then I will put them in one at a time, and I will put the lid on as soon as I put a flatbread in, leave that lid on for about a minute, take the lid off, flip the flatbread and cook without a lid on the other side for 2 minutes, and that means that they are done. It's very quick, it's very easy, a delicious lunch. So I'm going to put these butternut squash in the oven, start soaking some lentils, get back to work, and also eat one of these, which I made last night. They do not look appetizing at all, but they are so tasty. These are pumpkin and cinnamon muffins. Again, I'll link the recipe in the description box down below, but these are dangerous. Okay, I will insert some clips of the soup and bread making here, and I'll come back to you and talk about books soon. Hi, it is a couple of days later, and I decided I would start with the Midwich Cuckoos. In the end, I held this one up and chocky to Mr. M and just said, which one should I read? Because if I'm torn between 2 books, that's often what I do. And he said I should read the Midwich Cuckoos. So I've started reading this, and it is narrated from the point of view of a man who lives in a place called Midwich. But he was away for one evening because it was his birthday. He went away with his wife Janet, and when they returned the next morning, they find all of the roads cut off to their village, and a policeman saying that they can't go down the road at all. So they decide to take another route, And instead of waiting, which is what they have been told to do whilst everything is being checked out, they decide to walk across a field and try and get in that way. And as they're walking, his wife ahead of him falls down. Like, she just walks across an invisible barrier and seems to fall asleep and pass out. And he follows her, and the same thing happens to him. It turns out this has happened to everybody that is in Midwich, and the authorities are trying to work out where the cutoff of this thing is. They think it's gas, perhaps, an invisible gas that they can't see, and maybe people are poisoned. They use canaries to try and work out where this barrier is, marking off areas where a canary will fall asleep if they are taken over a certain point, and they note that if they bring the canary back with a hook so that they don't get caught in the gas as well, the canary will immediately wake up again and be okay. So they're very perplexed as to what is going on. I really like the way that this is narrated, because it's narrated by someone who is familiar with the area and has connections with people who live there, because they live there themselves, and because this is a written account to document what is happening. It feels very makeshift, I suppose, in the best way possible, because it's being narrated by an ordinary guy who's trying to sound as though he has a bit of authority on the subject, but these are just his scribblings in his notebook. And in that way, it's really reminding me of the Hopkins manuscript by R.T. Sheriff, which was published, I think, I think it was written on the run-up to the Second World War, and that was a dystopian book about the moon colliding with the Earth, and it was an allegory for unrest in Europe at the time. This was written just after the Second World War, and I get the sense that this fear of gas and invasion and of invisible threat is also an allegory for the Second World War, so I'm really enjoying how those two books are mirroring each other, not just in their themes, but also in their writing style, because the Hopkins manuscript is also narrated from a man who lives in a town who has been told that the moon is going to collide with the Earth, and he's decided to document his thoughts in case history wants to find out what happened to citizens in the future. So yeah, I would strongly pair these two together, and that's one of my favourite books, so that bodes well for this one too. I'm going to continue reading this. This video is very kindly sponsored by Serious Readers, so please allow me to chat to you about them just for a minute or two. Serious Readers is a company that I have loved for a very long time, and as you know, I've been working with them this autumn winter, and I've worked with them previously too because I think that they're great. This is one of their products. They make reading lights. So this is one of their high definition lights. It is a floor lamp. You can get it corded or uncorded. Mine is corded, but it's still really easy to move around the house, and I love it. You can extend it to different heights, and you can also flex it so that you can make sure the light is focusing on whatever you happen to be reading. I'll do a cutaway so that you can see it in action. You can dim the light or make it brighter. The lights that they use in their Serious Lights range are lights that they have invented themselves with a technology called daylight wavelength technology, which mimics daylight as much as possible. And this is why I love them. These lights are brilliant at all times of year, but obviously it's getting darker earlier at the moment, so these are particularly brilliant in the autumn and winter months. They create a wonderful reading environment, which isn't just cozy, but is also very practical and helpful and makes my eyes feel much more comfortable, and so I can read for longer, which is brilliant. They are a small UK-based company. I will link them in the description box down below. Go and check out their Serious Lights range, and if you would like to purchase one yourself, I have a code for you that is SR405, and that code will get you £100 off a high definition light, which is one of these, plus free delivery as well. Go ahead and check them out. As I said, I love what they do. I love their lights. I use them every single day. So thanks very much to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video. I am going to curl up with this book and read some more, and I'll come back to you when I finished it. Hi, I have finished reading The Midwich Cuckoos, and I think this is my favourite John Wyndham that I've read, but I'm very aware that I haven't read any of his in over 10 years now. So I don't know how much authority that statement holds, but if memory serves me correctly, this is my favourite. Something that I found a little bit frustrating about the way this book is packaged and not the book itself is that basically the plot is the entire blurb. So you don't get to discover too many new things when you're reading it. And I'm not sure if that's because it's a classic and that's sometimes done with classics, or if that would always been done. Like when this was published, maybe this was a blurb that resembles the original. I do think it doesn't matter so much because the plot isn't the pivotal thing in this book. It's more the way the characters react to the plot around them and how it's unfolding. So as I said, I think in the last clip, Midwich, everyone who lives there fell asleep one day and then they wake up the next day. And the authorities aren't sure what happened. They think maybe there's been some kind of attack there, that gas put people to sleep. And then, as the blurb says, all the women who live in Midwich of childbearing age learn that they are pregnant. And it's really unsettling. Like, obviously that's unsettling. But I think when I read the blurb initially, I just thought, oh, that's a really interesting concept. But then you get to the nitty gritty of what that means. Because this is a group of women who are being forced to have children that they didn't consent to having. And they don't know if these children are theirs, who they belong to, how they got into their bodies, what happened to them when they were asleep. And at first it just appears to be individual cases because a lot of these women feel shame about becoming pregnant because they have realised that they couldn't possibly be, for instance, their husband's baby because of the way the dates line up, and they're worried their husbands are going to leave them. Some of them aren't in relationships at all. Some of them are queer women who do not sleep with men. So they are extremely perplexed as to what is happening. And then when the men of the village start to find out that it isn't just individual cases and it is all of the women in the town, they think they shouldn't tell the women. Don't give them information because women can't handle it and it will cause mass hysteria. So there's layers of control here. These women's bodies have been taken over by this possible alien life force, but then the men in the village are also trying to control the women's bodies and minds by curtailing the information that is available to them. But because they think their intentions are honourable, they think themselves better than whatever else is going on in the village. They declare themselves the good guys. And that is what is interesting about this book, is the discussion on good and evil and what is right and wrong. As the blurb says, these children are then born and it appears that they can communicate with each other and it's all very sinister. But towards the end of the book, without giving away more plot, a situation has unfolded and two characters are talking about how the authorities may react to what has happened. And one of them, I'm paraphrasing, says something like, but we have a left-leaning government, so they're going to do the right, honourable thing, aren't they? And another character says, well, it's all very well and good saying that you have a left-leaning government, but if this left-leaning government gets wind of the fact that people are scared and feel threatened, and it may be an easy sell to have a right-wing policy to attract more votes in order to make those people feel less threatened, then maybe a politician who is left-leaning will swing to the right for a while in order to secure their own personal power, because that's the way the world works. And I wish that that wasn't true, but I think it is true on many an occasion. So that was interesting. A fun thing in this book is that a few characters talk about H.G. Wells and other old science fiction novels in their bid to try and understand what's happening to them in the moment. That could be cheesy. You know, if this were a novel, what would happen when it is a novel? And that's quite meta, but no one actually uses those words, so it's fine. I thought that was really, really fun. As I mentioned in the last clip, this is clearly fueled by emotions surrounding the end of the Second World War, which this was published just after. Themes on dominance and invasion and empire. This is a discussion on power and who gets to wield it and who gets to make the important decisions and who gets to tell that history as well, because this is being recorded by an ordinary guy who happens to live in Midwich. He's not a historian, but he is somebody who has a vested interest in what is going on. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. I would love to know your thoughts on it. If you happen to have read it, let me know in a comment down below. I'm not sure which book I'm going to head to next, but I will check back in with you when I've started reading another. quick update. I have started reading Persuasion by Jane Austen. I don't know if you can see in this light because November, but I've somehow got tomato sauce, I think, on this cover. How have I done that? I wasn't even eating. I don't understand. This is weird. Anyway, I've started reading Persuasion. I'll try and get that mark off later, and hopefully I can. I have to say, I'm not hugely enjoying myself yet. I haven't read a Jane Austen book for the first time, as in not a reread, in a really, really long time. I read Pride and Prejudice for the first time at school when I think I was maybe 12 or 13. I don't think we read the whole thing at school. I think we read excerpts and then maybe we watched the 1995 BBC adaptation, which remains my favourite to this day. I will not hear a word against it, with Jennifer, can't remember her surname, and Colin Firth. It's my favourite. I think it's brilliant. I rewatched it again a couple of months ago. Loved it. I remember saving up and spending £20 to get the VHS of that. And that was a lot of money. Like, £20 isn't nothing anyway, but £20 back in the late 90s was a lot of money. So yeah, I had that on VHS. But yes, I watched it more recently, not on VHS, sadly. So I read that for the first time when I was 12 or 13, and then I read Mansfield Park and Northanger Abbey at university, which will be over 15 years ago. So I guess whenever I have read a Jane Austen book previously for the first time, it's been in an academic setting, it's been to analyse it, it's been to write about it. And that's very different to reading for pleasure. And I can't remember if when I first started reading each of those books, I felt a bit mentally fatigued by them. Quite possibly I did. It takes a while to really get your bearings and get to grips with all the characters, because there are always so many characters, and you forget about that once those worlds become so integrated into your being, I guess. You know, I know and love all of the characters in Pride and Prejudice now, and I wouldn't find it in any way, shape or form confusing to read. In fact, if you have been here a few years, you will remember in 2020, to try and keep us all company, I did an audiobook of Pride and Prejudice and uploaded it to this channel, reading the whole book out, because that's what an audiobook is, and that's still available on here, so I'll link it in the description box down below. And I had a great time. It was so much fun, but I'm not having fun with Persuasion yet, because I'm still becoming acquainted with it and trying to, as I said, get my bearings. So I've read the first 3 chapters. It is about 3 sisters, Elizabeth, Mary and Anne. There really are not many names in these books, are there? Because, you know, we have a Lizzie and a Mary in Pride and Prejudice too. But yes, we have Elizabeth, who is the eldest, and then Anne and Mary. Mary, the youngest daughter, is the only one of the 3 who is married. Anne was going to get married, but turned down an advance that she received from somebody else because it was deemed an unsuitable match. She was persuaded to not marry him. Their mother died, they live with their dad is really reckless with their money, and because of that they're going to have to leave their home and let it out, and they're going to move to Bath and live there for a while. That's where I'm at the moment. So I think what I'm going to do, because I have to go out now to take a photo of Huma Qureshi's book, Playing Games. This is a book that I read recently and am reviewing it for Toast this month. But when I was out and about reading it, I had the battered proof copy. I now have the finished copy. So I need to take a photo of that. So I'm going to go out and do that, and I've downloaded the audiobook of Persuasion. There are so many different audiobooks, as is the case with many classics, but I found one narrated by Juliet Stevenson, and I always enjoy her audiobook narration. So I'm going to start listening to that. I think the way I'm feeling about the book at the moment is that there isn't a huge amount of humour in it, and it just feels as though I'm working quite hard, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm sure the payoff, well, I'm hoping that the payoff will be good. But I would really like to feel as though I'm sinking into it and enjoying it, as opposed to just having an awkward introduction, which is how I'm feeling right now. So let me listen to the audiobook and let's go outside. I'm really hoping it's not going to rain. I'm saying that, it's raining outside right now. It's raining right now. Of course it is. Of course it is. Okay, let's go take a picture in the rain and listen to an audiobook. Hi, it's a couple of days later. I come to you from the kitchen because I'm gonna make some snacks. I'm apparently now one of those people who likes to make protein balls, but they're not protein balls. At least these ones that I'm making are not. You can add protein powder and I don't have any of that, so I'm not doing that. So I guess you'd probably call these energy balls. They're just sugary, to be honest. They've got dates in them and then cacao powder. You could add peanut butter if you wanted to. Almonds, vanilla extract, excuse my phone. What else goes into them? A bit of honey, I think. Oh, and that's it. Oh no, and desiccated coconut as well. So you just blend all those things together and then put them into ball shapes, roll them again in coconut and then keep them in the fridge. The reason I'm making them is because I get quite hungry at the moment, but also they're quite good for walking, and I'm gonna go for a walk tomorrow. I'm trying to get ahead at the moment with toast walks, not too far ahead, because I want to do them in the seasons that they're going up in. I just mean I'm doing December's maybe 2 weeks earlier than I would, because it's currently, as I'm filming this, the middle of November. But it's just, as you can probably imagine, getting harder to do the longer walks. So I want to just make sure that I've got them under my belt, really. I'm doing one in December. January's article is going to be looking ahead to books that are being published next year, so it doesn't involve a walk. But I am going to do a walk for February, but definitely not in February. I think I'll probably do that one, I don't know, as soon as winter hits, really. It's still looking very autumnal outside, which is obviously fine. I love that. But for February's article, I would like to do it when it's looking wintry and I take photos when I go on those walks. So tomorrow's walk, Sanne is going to join me, which is very nice. And I'm going to be walking from, we are going to be walking from Paddington. I want to go along Grand Union Canal, which is a very beautiful walk, along to Notting Hill and Holland Park. I do enjoy doing this project for work. Yeah, I don't know, a combination of some of my favourite things, walking and books, and also taking photographs, and especially at this time of year, it's lovely. Anyway, I have been continuing with the audiobook of Persuasion. I don't have much to update you on yet, so I'll update you on that later. But I have also been reading Some Rain Must Fall and Other Stories by Michel Faber. I'm about halfway through this collection at the moment. I definitely enjoy his novels more than his short stories. Though maybe if I read a collection of short stories he was writing now, I might gel with them. This feels very 90s because it's from the 90s, as in there's some language surrounding bodies and stuff that I'm finding a little bit jarring. But there has been one story in here that I really loved, and that one is called Toy Story, and it's about God as a young boy discovering this planet that's just been dumped, and it's Earth, and he takes it home and he hangs it up in his bedroom and he's just looking at it all the time. It says, one day, rummaging through the trash, God found something especially good, a planet. He lifted it out of the bin, grasping it enthusiastically at first, then more gingerly, for even though it had survived intact till now, it was oddly fragile. Underneath his small fingers, the planet's protective coating of atmosphere had given way, and he'd felt the powdery surface of its earth directly against his skin. Now he held the globe by its white poles and surveyed the damage. Had it been a perfect sphere to begin with? If so, it was ever so slightly ovoid now. The dusting of earth on his fingertips was bleeding into the atmosphere like a sprinkling of cinnamon on the vanilla extremes of north and south. On the scuffed and dented continents, a few new lakes were forming. Apart from this, there was no harm done. I just think the imagery is wonderful. There's also a short story, which again is sci-fi tainted, I was going to say, but that sounds very negative. It was sci-fi coated, let's say, about a world where fish and whales are swimming through a city, like in the air, which I also really enjoyed. So I think I'm definitely, in the case of his short stories, drawn more to the science fiction-y, philosophy-based ones. And my favourite novels of his are definitely Under the Skin and The Book of Strange New Things, so that would make sense, though I have a big soft spot for The Crimson Petal and The White too. So yeah, I will finish reading that book. Also, we'll continue reading other things and we'll check in with you. I will insert some footage here of these energy balls that I'm going to make, because I'm sure that's riveting. I'll leave the recipe in the description box down below. But yeah, they're good walking snacks. I approve of them for that. And speaking of walking, I will insert footage here of the walk that I'm going to go on tomorrow, and I will check back in with you very soon. Good morrow. It is more than a week since the last clip. It's the weekend and I'm coming to you in my pajamas because anything else would be a lie. I am pretty exhausted today and I've been editing this video and was having a laugh at myself at the introduction when I was saying that maybe I would get round to reading The Robber Bride. I will break it to you now. I haven't got round to reading The Robber Bride and this video is going up tomorrow, so I don't think that that is going to happen. But I don't know really why I thought it would in the first place, ever the optimist. But as well as filming this video, I have been reviewing 19 books for work and I've been on a book deadline, like my own writing a book deadline. So yeah, no, The Robber Bride is not happening, but I have read The Magic Toyshop and then I'll check in with you tomorrow as a final clip to talk to you about Persuasion. So The Magic Toyshop by Angela Carter. This is a novel about a girl called Melanie who's growing up on the cusp of feeling like she is a woman, but also at the same time feeling very, I guess, naive and full of hope. There's a lot of Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan references in here, which I enjoyed. And then at the very beginning, her parents die and she and her siblings are taken to live with their uncle, who I don't think they've ever met, but they've heard a lot about him, and they know that he has a toy shop where he makes these very realistic dolls. The thing with Angela Carter, I have realised reading this novel, is that I really like her imagery, I really like her ideas, and I think for me personally, in her books, in her novels in particular, she has flashes of brilliance. So I'll have paragraphs that I've underlined and just like, this is amazing. But then I don't really love the overall execution. These scenes don't feel realised enough for me to suspend my disbelief over the course of a whole novel. For me personally, I think they're better suited to short stories, and I have enjoyed a lot of her short stories in the past. I think a bit of a product of when this was written. This was published in the 60s, but sometimes Angela Carter's books can feel a lot like White Woman is excited and has wonderment at how exotic the rest of the world is, and that is just kind of othering and a bit weird. So, as I said, I did underline some paragraphs, to be honest, mainly towards the beginning, because I was definitely more captivated at the beginning. I think because of all the Peter Pan references, and if you've been here a long time, you may remember my deep dive video into Peter Pan from like 2016 or something. But here is an example of a paragraph that I really like. I know he said Melanie is walking through her parents' garden and she is romanticizing growing up. In her tree climbing days, the ascent would have taken only a few minutes, but she had given up climbing when she started to grow her hair and stopped wearing shorts every day during the summer holidays. Since she was 13, when her periods began, she had felt she was pregnant with herself, bearing the slowly ripening embryo of Melanie grown up inside her for a gestation time the length of which she was not precisely aware. And during this time, to climb a tree might provoke a miscarriage, and she would remain forever stranded in childhood, a crop-haired tomboy, but needs must when the devil drives. I just love this image of being pregnant with yourself and being worried that if you put a toe out of line or you don't do the road to adulthood correctly, then you will double back on yourself and just exist in childhood forever. I think that is just wonderful. So moments like that are amazing. But then, yeah, I felt like there were quite a few watered down characters. And if there were more moments like this, I would have loved it more. Outside was a weatherless London morning, a mean monotone, sunless, rainless, a cool nothing. This, she thought, was her own climate. No extremes ever again. Fear no more the heat of the sun and all that. She was in limbo and would be for the rest of her life, if you could call it a life, dragging out its weary length with no more great joys or fearful griefs for her blood was running too thin to bear them, and she was only 15. It was appalling. So when she's being introspective, Melanie, when the character is being introspective, I think that is where Carter shines, because she knows how to get to the core of these protagonists. But when the character is looking outwards and observing the rest of the world, it just feels a little bit insubstantial, and that wasn't my favourite. So no, I did not enjoy this as much as maybe I would have done 10, 15 years ago, which is a shame. I, to change the subject, have been lamenting the fact that I can't eat blue cheese and smelly cheese just in general, but then I remembered today that I can eat camembert if I cook it. So I think that may be on the cards today. Baked camembert and bread. That is what I would like for today. That would be good. So that is my very exciting plan for this Saturday. And as I said, I will catch up with you tomorrow to chat about Persuasion. Well, that was delightful. You will be pleased to hear that I got the tomato stain mostly off the front of the cover of Persuasion. I am about halfway through the audiobook of this, and I am also pleased to say that I'm now really enjoying it. I think that's partly because I'm further into the tale, and I feel as if I've got to grips with the characters and the setting and all of that. But I do think that Juliet Stevenson's narration is also helping. I think her intonation when it comes to addressing things like humour is helpful to listen to. I'm also enjoying / rolling my eyes at how many times the word persuasion is used in here. But I am being persuaded myself to enjoy it. I'm also liking the discussion on the responsibility of women in the home as well, which I feel like is being talked about more than in some of her other novels, or at least as far as I can remember. So Anne has gone to stay with her sister Mary, and Mary doesn't really enjoy, or seems to not really enjoy, looking after her children very much, and Anne does. And one evening one of her children has an accident and she has to give up a dinner engagement in order to stay behind and look after him. And she's really cross about this because she's like, well, why do I have to do that and not my husband? Like, why can't he do that? Because he would be doing the amount of work that I'm doing, and I don't think that I am any better equipped, etc. And yeah, I thought that was quite refreshing. So yes, I am liking this one, and I will talk about it more in a wrap-up. I don't think I'm going to be doing a November wrap-up because there are so many other videos that I want to film before the end of the year. So what I'm going to do is combine my November and December reading together and do a joint wrap-up towards the end of the year. So what have I learned in this video? I think I have learned that I prefer Michel Faber's longer books as opposed to his short stories. I prefer Angela Carter's shorter fiction, short stories, to her longer books. Jane Austen still can captivate me, though it may take me a while to get there. Margaret Atwood is apparently someone I will have to decide on again in the future because, once more, I have not read The Robber Bride. But John Wyndham, I loved. I really, really keep thinking about the Midwich Cuckoos, and I'm going to behave myself because I guess the whole point of this video is that when I get excited about an author, or at least when I used to get excited by an author, I would purchase all of their books, read some of them and not all of them. And I'm looking at the other books on the back that I don't have, Trouble with Lichen and The Kraken Wakes. Those are the two books of his that I haven't read yet and don't own, but I'm not going to buy them. That's not what this video is about, but I do look forward to, at some point in the not too distant future, hopefully reading Chucky by John Wyndham. I would love to know if you have any authors on your shelves that you used to love a long time ago and that you haven't read for a while, and you always wonder whether or not you would still adore them now. Next year, I do plan to do a bit of a rereading project, and I'll talk about that more nearer the time, but that's been on my mind too, and I think that this has made me even more excited for that, even though this vlog wasn't 100% success rate when it came to revisiting authors. But the rereading project will be to reread books that I definitely have loved before, as opposed to going to different books by authors who I've loved before. Thank you very much for joining me for this video. If you enjoyed it and you're new to my channel and you would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. If you enjoy my content and you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, there's a link for that in the description box down below. Patreon is a place where you can tip creators whose work you enjoy, and the support that I receive over there funds my time making free content for you all on here, and also funds my time making it accessible by creating captions and all of that good stuff. I would love to know how you are in a comment down below, please, and I will see you next week for another video. Thanks again to Serious Readers for sponsoring this. Their links are in the description box too. I'm sending lots of love to you all, and I'll speak to you later. Bye.